When money gets tight, most people panic at the grocery store. The Amish do something different. They walk into the kitchen, look at what they already have, and turn it into meals that keep a whole family fed, warm, and steady through the hardest seasons. These are the 30 dishes that carried them through lean years, and they still work today. Hearty potato soup. When winter settles in and the cold starts biting at the bones, Amish kitchens lean hard on one thing that never fails: potatoes. Potato soup is the kind of meal that looks almost too simple on paper. Potatoes, milk, onions, salt, pepper. But it feeds a crowd like it was designed for hard times. Because it was. The potatoes come from the fall harvest, stored in a cellar where they'll last months without fuss. The milk often comes from the family's own cows, which means no extra trips and no extra costs. And when those basics simmer together long enough, something changes. The whole pot turns creamy, thick, and satisfying without needing fancy ingredients or expensive meat. Amish families often serve it with thick slices of homemade bread, and suddenly a cheap meal feels like a feast. It's warm in your hands, warm in your chest, and it fills you in a way that quiets the panic of a tight season. Rich flavor doesn't always come from rich ingredients. Sometimes it comes from knowing how to make the simplest things work harder. Every day, Amish bread. In Amish homes, bread isn't a sometimes food. It's the heartbeat of the kitchen. You'll find fresh loaves cooling on the counter 3, sometimes 4 times a week, because store-bought bread just doesn't make sense when you're feeding 8, 10, 12 people on a tight budget. Bulk flour, yeast, a little sugar, and salt become a steady, reliable meal foundation that can stretch anything else you put on the table. And what makes it powerful isn't a secret recipe, it's repetition. Amish women learn the dough by touch. They know when it's ready by feel, not by timers and apps. They know how long it rises by the way it looks and smells. That kind of consistency creates more than food. It creates calm. It's comfort, yes, but it's also survival, baked into something simple enough to make again and again. Ham and bean chowder. Ham and bean chowder is what happens when a family refuses to throw away flavor. A ham bone that looks like it's already done to most people becomes the beginning of a pot that can feed a crowd for a day, sometimes 2. Dried beans stored in the cellar get poured in, onions get chopped, and everything simmers low and slow until the beans soften and the bone gives up every last bit of richness it's holding. This is one of those meals that teaches you something. Time is an ingredient. The Amish understand that if you let something cook long enough, even cheap food turns into something special. The ham bone releases its salt and smoke into the broth, and the beans break down into a creamy base that tastes far bigger than its cost. It's protein stretched the smart way, not the desperate way. A pot like this fills bellies without making anyone feel like they're struggling. It tastes like comfort. It tastes like you planned ahead. And in a hard season, that feeling matters just as much as the calories. Chicken corn soup. In Amish kitchens, a chicken isn't a single meal. It's a plan. Chicken corn soup exists because nothing gets wasted and everything gets used until it's given everything it has to give. The meat goes in, of course, but so do the bones, the scraps, the parts most people toss without thinking. The carcass becomes broth. The broth becomes the heart of the soup. Then the shredded meat goes back in, and sweet corn kernels add that unmistakable farm flavor, especially when the corn was picked fresh and cut off the cob. Add homemade noodles, and you've got a meal that sticks to your ribs and carries people through long work days, cold evenings, and the kind of tired that only comes from physical labor. Even the fat gets skimmed and saved for cooking later. This isn't just thrift, it's a system. One bird feeds Sunday dinner, then turns into soup, then becomes leftovers that stretch even further. Chicken corn soup isn't fancy, but it feels like something you'd pay good money for if it came in a bowl at a cozy restaurant. The Amish just know how to build it from what they already have. Amish beef noodle casserole. Beef noodle casserole is the Amish answer to feeding a crowd without stress. It's baked in one pan, served hot, and it holds up well whether you're feeding family at home or bringing something to a church gathering where light snacks aren't going to cut it. Noodles provide the bulk. Ground beef brings the protein. A creamy sauce ties it together into something that feels comforting and complete. And the genius is that it's not expensive. Ground beef is cheaper than steaks or roasts, and when you stretch it with noodles, you can feed a dozen people without anyone feeling shorted. It's also a leftovers champion. Tomorrow's lunch is already handled. Reheat it in a skillet, warm it in the oven, or eat it cold if you're rushing out the door. Amish cooking isn't about showing off. It's about making something reliable that works every time. This casserole is exactly that. Simple planning, simple ingredients, maximum payoff. Poor man's steak. Poor man's steak exists because Amish cooks know how to make cheap ingredients feel expensive. Instead of buying steak, they shape ground beef into thick patties and bake them low and slow in a rich mushroom gravy. And that slow bake is the whole secret. It tenderizes the meat, keeps it moist, and infuses it with flavor until it feels like a Sunday dinner instead of a budget compromise. The gravy, sometimes homemade, sometimes from a simple soup base, turns ordinary beef into something that tastes almost luxurious, especially when served over mashed potatoes or egg noodles. This is the kind of dish that reminds you how much of good food is technique, not price. Amish families serve it when they want something special, but can't justify premium cuts. They don't rush it. They let the oven do the work. And when it comes out, bubbling and thick, it feels like a treat, even though it costs a fraction of what steak would. That's the point. Hard times don't cancel dignity. You just learn how to cook smarter. Haystack dinner. Haystack dinner is proof that cheap doesn't have to mean boring. It's a build-your-own meal that starts with a base, chips or crackers, then gets layered with beans, meat, cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, salsa, sour cream, whatever you have. The beauty is flexibility. If the fridge is sparse, you still have dinner. If the garden is producing, you pile it high. If you've got picky eaters, no problem. Everyone builds their own plate, and nobody can complain because they chose it themselves. Kids love it because it feels like an activity. Parents love it because it uses odds and ends and clears out leftovers that would otherwise sit around until they're wasted. It's fast, it's filling, and it feeds a crowd without the cook standing over the stove all night. And there's something quietly satisfying about a meal like this. It gives people control in a season where money might be tight and choices might feel limited. Haystack dinner says, we're still okay. We're still eating well. Homemade sausage patties. Homemade sausage patties show how Amish families turn trimmings into something people crave. When hogs are butchered in late fall, nothing gets thrown away. The scraps that don't become roasts or chops get ground, seasoned with salt, pepper, sage, maybe a pinch of red pepper, and shaped into patties. Then they hit a cast iron skillet where they fry in their own fat. No extra oil, no waste, just crisp edges and juicy centers. It's simple, bold, and practical. Extra patties can be frozen or stored in jars covered in lard for lean seasons when fresh meat isn't available. And that's the quiet power of making sausage at home. You control the cost, the flavor, and the ingredients. You're not paying for packaging and markup, you're paying attention. It's the kind of food that makes breakfast feel filling, makes supper feel grounded, and keeps protein on the table even when money is tight. Roast chicken with root veggies. A roast chicken with root vegetables is the Amish version of stretching one bird into multiple meals without anyone feeling like they're repeating the same dinner. The chicken goes into the oven with simple seasonings, surrounded by potatoes, carrots, and onions. As it roasts, the vegetables underneath soak up every drop of fat and juice, turning into something rich and flavorful without extra effort. Sunday dinner is only the beginning. Leftover meat becomes sandwiches or casseroles. The carcass becomes soup later in the week. The drippings become gravy or frying fat for potatoes the next morning. Nothing gets wasted because every part has value. And that's what makes this dish so powerful. It's not just a meal, it's a strategy. It's the kind of cooking that makes you feel like you're ahead, even when money is tight. One pan, one bird, a full table, and plans for what comes next. Cabbage and noodles. Cabbage and noodles is the kind of meal that almost dares you to call it boring until you eat it. It's boiled cabbage tossed with buttered noodles, seasoned with salt and pepper, sometimes boosted with onions or a little bacon if it's available. That's it, but the simplicity is the whole point. Cabbage is cheap, stores well, and shows up in Amish kitchens all winter because it doesn't demand special care. A whole head can feed several people, and when you stretch it with noodles, you've got a full meal for very little money. The butter is what makes it comforting, turning plain ingredients into something warm and satisfying. It's not trying to impress anyone, it's trying to feed people. And it does. Large households rely on dishes like this because they work on the nights when you don't have time, energy, or extra ingredients. It's frugal cooking at its most honest. Simple food done well, so nobody goes to bed hungry. Amish egg noodles. Egg noodles in Amish kitchens aren't a side dish, they're infrastructure. Flour and eggs become a stiff dough, rolled thin, cut into strips, then dried in big batches and stored for months. That one simple process supplies soups, casseroles, gravy dishes, buttered noodles, and anything else that needs a filling base. And it's cheaper than store-bought pasta by a mile. A box of noodles at the store costs real money. Homemade noodles cost pennies and taste better because they're real. The work becomes family time too. Kids help roll the dough, cut strips, and learn skills that actually matter. The noodles dry on racks or clean towels, then get tucked away in jars or bags like a pantry investment. Amish cooks use them constantly because they absorb flavor and make any meal feel heavier and more satisfying. When you're feeding a lot of people, you need foods that do the heavy lifting. Egg noodles do exactly that. Amish fried potatoes. Amish fried potatoes are what happens when you take the most basic ingredient in the cellar and treat it with respect. Sliced potatoes hit a hot cast iron skillet with onions and bacon grease, frying until they're golden and crisp on the outside while staying tender inside. The bacon grease isn't extra. It's saved from breakfast, stored because flavor is valuable, and used again because waste is a luxury. This dish works as a morning side with eggs, a hearty filler at supper, or even a simple meal on its own when paired with bread and butter. The smell alone draws people into the kitchen without anyone calling them twice. And it's cheap. Potatoes keep well, onions store well, and the cooking fat is already paid for. It's the kind of food that reminds you simple doesn't mean bland. When you know heat, timing, and a good pan, you can make something unforgettable out of almost nothing. Potato cakes. Potato cakes exist because the Amish don't treat leftovers like a problem. They treat them like raw material. Yesterday's mashed potatoes get shaped into patties, dusted with flour, and fried in butter or bacon grease until the edges crisp up and the center stays soft. Suddenly, leftovers become something people actually look forward to. Served hot, often with applesauce on the side, the contrast of crispy potato and sweet tart fruit makes it feel like comfort food instead of second-day dinner. And there's a lesson in it. Preparation matters. Plain mashed potatoes might not excite anyone the next day, but fry them and the whole thing changes. This is how Amish families keep meals interesting even when the ingredients are repetitive. Potato cakes can show up at breakfast, lunch, or supper, and they quietly prevent waste because they use up food before it spoils. In hard times, that matters. Nothing gets thrown away, and even simple leftovers get turned into something satisfying. Apple butter. Apple butter is Amish patience turned into sweetness. When apple trees are heavy in the fall, families cook apples low and slow for hours, stirring and reducing until the mixture becomes dark, thick, and intensely flavored. This isn't watery applesauce. Apple butter is concentrated, spreadable, rich, and strong enough that a thin layer turns plain bread into something you crave. The process can take 6 to 8 hours, but the reward is jars that last through winter and into spring. And the economics are hard to beat. If you have apple trees, the fruit is essentially free. Cooking it down preserves the harvest without fancy equipment or complicated steps. Jar it, store it, and you've got months of flavor ready whenever the table feels too plain. Amish families spread it on bread, bake with it, or eat it straight from the jar, because it's one of those foods that makes hard times feel softer. Cheap to make, long to last, and powerful in its simplicity. Cornmeal mush. Cornmeal mush is the kind of breakfast that built strong backs and long workdays. Cornmeal cooked in water or milk turns into a thick porridge that's cheap, warming, and filling enough to carry someone through morning chores without a snack. Amish families serve it with what they have: butter for richness, milk for creaminess, molasses for sweetness and iron. A bag of cornmeal lasts weeks, and each bowl costs almost nothing. And the Amish don't waste the leftovers either. Extra mush gets poured into a pan, cooled until firm, then sliced and fried the next day, creating crispy edges and a soft center, almost like a completely different dish. That's the genius here. One ingredient, 2 meals, no extra cost. And it proves a point the Amish live by. The simplest foods can do the most work if you use them wisely. Baked oatmeal. Baked oatmeal is the Amish trick for turning a cheap pantry staple into something kids actually get excited about. Rolled oats mixed with milk, eggs, cinnamon, and a bit of sugar bake into a soft, sliceable dish that feels like breakfast cake without the cost of real dessert. It's warm, filling, and steady, exactly what you want before a morning of chores or school. The oats absorb the liquid and set into a moist texture that reheats beautifully, which means one pan can feed multiple people for more than one morning. Amish parents love it because it's simple and real. No neon colors, no sugary cereal tricks, just food that holds you over. And you can dress it up when you have a little extra. Raisins, apples, a drizzle of cream. But even plain, it works. A batch costs just a few dollars, but it feels like something you made on purpose. Amish pickled eggs. Pickled eggs are farmhouse practicality with a little bit of flair. After pickled beets are made, the leftover brine becomes a second preservation tool. Hard-boiled eggs go into the pink brine and sit for days, soaking up tangy flavor and color until they're bright, interesting, and ready to grab at any time. For Amish families with laying hens, eggs can be abundant, sometimes more than you can eat fresh. Pickling extends their usefulness and turns them into a snack that doesn't require cooking when you're hungry. They store well in a cool cellar or refrigerator, making them perfect for packed lunches, quick protein, or something to eat between chores. And because the brine is reused, the cost is almost nothing. The eggs become tangy, slightly sweet, and completely different from plain boiled eggs. It's a small change that adds variety to a diet built on simple foods. In hard times, variety matters more than people realize. It keeps meals from feeling like punishment. Vinegar pie. Vinegar pie sounds like a prank until you taste it, and then you understand why it survived the Depression. When lemons were too expensive or unavailable, people still wanted a pie with that bright, tart bite. Amish families adopted vinegar pie because it solved the problem with what was already in the pantry. A small amount of vinegar, balanced with sugar and eggs, creates a filling that tastes surprisingly similar to lemon custard without the cost. The key is restraint. Just enough vinegar to bring the tang, not enough to overwhelm. Baked in a crust, the filling sets smooth and sliceable, and it becomes one of those dishes people learn to respect once they stop judging the ingredient list. Vinegar pie exists because hard times force creativity, and Amish cooks didn't accept a life without dessert just because ingredients were scarce. They adapted, they experimented, they found solutions. This pie proves that poor food isn't always worse, it's sometimes smarter. Amish chow 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 is how Amish families make sure the garden doesn't go to waste. When vegetables come in faster than you can eat them fresh, you either lose them or you preserve them. Chow chow is a mixed vegetable relish made by chopping up cabbage, beans, peppers, onions, sometimes corn or lima beans, and pickling everything together in a sweet and sour brine. Then it's jarred and stored for months, filling pantry shelves like a bank account you can eat from later. In winter, when meals can get heavy and repetitive, chow chow adds crunch, tang, and brightness to plain food. It wakes up meat and potatoes. It adds flavor to beans. It makes a simple plate feel less bleak. Amish cooks make huge batches because it's efficient. One afternoon of work becomes a long stretch of meals that taste better. It's not just a condiment. It's a preservation strategy, a way of turning surplus into security. When money is tight, food waste is expensive. Chow chow makes sure that doesn't happen. Amish pumpkin pie. Amish pumpkin pie starts where most modern versions don't, at the actual pumpkin. Instead of opening a can, Amish families roast fresh pumpkins grown in their gardens, mash the flesh, and build the filling from scratch. It takes longer, but the taste is different, fresh, earthy, and slightly textured in a way canned filling can't replicate. Eggs, cream, sugar, and simple spices like cinnamon and nutmeg bring it together without fancy blends or expensive extras. And Amish pies aren't stingy. They're baked in thick crusts and cut into generous slices because they're meant to feed working people, not decorate a dessert menu. After fall harvest, pumpkins are everywhere, and families often bake multiple pies because the ingredients are affordable and the demand is real. One pie serves 8 to 10 people and keeps the household sweet through colder months. In hard seasons, desserts like this aren't frivolous. They're part of what keeps morale steady. Pumpkin pie is comfort that comes from the land, not the store. These 30 Amish dishes prove something we forget when grocery bills climb and budgets start to squeeze. Feeding a family doesn't take wealth. It takes wisdom. It takes habits. It takes knowing how to stretch what you already have until it becomes enough. And that's why these meals lasted through depressions, harsh winters, and lean years. because they're built on principles that don't change. If you want more old-fashioned, proven ways to lower your grocery bill, waste less food, and keep your kitchen steady no matter what the economy does, make sure you're subscribed. And drop a comment telling me which dish you grew up with, or which one you want to try first, because the next video is going even deeper into the meals that kept families fed when times got tough.